perhaps an interesting report on 6'2" today suggesting that West Ham United could sell Tomas Soucek in the summer transfer window. And the reasoning is very similar to Declan Rice. He's got a year to go on his contract, but West Ham have an option for a further year. So it's essentially, he's got 2 years left on his deal. But that's why West Ham are now evaluating that situation. Think it is now the time to sell Tomas Soucek while his stock's relatively high, the transfer value is relatively high. Do we need to be selling Tomas Soucek this summer? And this ties in with the reports that West Ham essentially only have the money to spend in which they raise. There might be a little bit more than that, but I don't think it'll be too much more. So if we are looking to raise funds and we're looking at the squad thinking, well, who can we sell on top of Declan Rice in order to free up the money for, hopefully, our new technical director to go spend it, then it would make sense to be starting to look at players like Tomas Soucek, whose contract is running out, and there's question marks over his future at West Ham in regards to being utilised as much as he has been previously. This report makes sense, and do you know something? I welcome it, because one thing I'm quite critical of West Ham, and I have been for years, I just don't bang on about it every week. We're crap at selling players. We are rubbish at it. We keep players for too long so that their value becomes next to nothing or nothing in some cases. Like Manuel Lanzini, for example, you know, he's gone out the door for free. We need to replace him, but we've got no funds to do it because he left for free. You look at our defensive situation, you know, Fabianski's worth nothing. He's going to need to be replaced next summer. Creswell's worth nothing. He's probably going to need to be replaced next summer. Ogbonna's going to need to be replaced. Value of nothing. You get my point. We are not good at selling players. That's why when we signed Issa Diop, he had at best an average time with West Ham United. But a large part of his transfer value was retained because of his age profile. We were able to sell him and get in a decent bit of money for him. But nevertheless, we're not very good at it. That's why our net spend is usually pretty impressive. You look at it, hey, the owner's ploughing loads of money. That's not the case. We're just not good at selling players. So when we buy players, which every club does, we just don't have the player sales to lessen the net spend. We are not good at it. Selling Tomas Soucek this summer, I think it would be a year late, but I think it would be a wise move. Get the money in while we can, because if we wait a further 12 months, he's now only got 1 year left on his contract and we're possibly going to have to sell him. We might give him a new deal, but bear in mind he's 28 years old at present, and he was, if you look at last season's starting 11, let's take the cup final 11, and you're looking at who needs upgraded, I would argue that Soucek's the one player you would pick out first. You'd probably say he's the one that we could probably do with upgrading first and foremost. So this is where it gets interesting for West Ham. But before I go any further, a couple bits of admin to get over and done with. First of all, about a third of you watching this video aren't subscribed to Hammers Chat, so please sort that out. Big red button underneath your video that says subscribe. Click it, it's free, takes you 2 seconds. Come and join the Hammers Chat journey. And second of all, the Claret and Blue polo shirts are back in stock. Had quite a few of you asking for them in the last month. They're back in stock, available in all sizes, as well as the black polo shirt, and we've also topped up all the out of stock sizes for the Who design and AC/DC design as well. So go to hammerschatstore.com, link in description, but make sure you're subscribed. Anyway, and this is with the benefit of hindsight, okay? This is the benefit of hindsight. Last summer we got told, oh, there's going to be a transition. West Ham are now going to play more expansive football. Now, I don't think it was quite labelled like that, but we're going to have more possession. And for the first half of the season, statistically, that was true. We were actually having more possession on average compared to the previous 2 under David Moyes. We were having more passes per sequence in the build-up to a shot. There was less crosses. So the numbers would actually suggest that there was some form of transition taking place. However, watching it week in, week out, I failed to see it, in all honesty. I struggled to really see what was different. It was just slower. That's how I would word it. Not prettier, it was just slower and less effective. But regardless, the minute we decided last summer that we're going to be a bit more of a possession-based team, let's go recruit Lucas Paqueta and Gianluca Scamacca. Let's go buy players to fit how we want to play. Now that made sense. I've got no problem with that. I think Emerson, Aguerd, I think they're good purchases as well. That's how we want to play. I think they were good signings too. So the players we brought in, I would argue, actually backed up the claim that we were going to try and transition to a bit more of a build-up team, a bit more possession-based. But the one thing that didn't add up was a lack of outgoings, because while you're improving your squad and you're bringing players in to suit the play, in theory there should be 1 or 2 players in your current squad that would no longer suit what you're trying to do. And I would suggest the main man is Tomas Soucek. Now he's got plenty of strengths for what we do at West Ham United, and I'm speaking about the first half of the season only here. We'll get on to the second half. First half of the season only, and I think this is where Soucek got exposed more than usual, because while we were trying to play these passing triangles a little bit more, his biggest weakness is his inability on the ball. I say inability, he's okay at it, but we need better than okay. His first touch isn't the best, his passing isn't the best, his creativity, his vision, all that stuff, it's not really his game. His game's the defensive side of it, the physical side of it, the aerial side of it. He's really good at those things, but his weakness is to summarise and keep it really simple, when West Ham are in possession. That is when Tomas Soucek is weaker. He thrives on getting on the ends of crosses, set pieces, we know that. But in terms of the build-up play, that's where he's a little bit weak. And you saw it last season. You saw it quite a lot, especially when Rice and Paqueta were doing their thing, and he couldn't really get involved to some extent. But we decided last summer we were going to try and transition, he should have been the first one, not only out the team, but you should have been really evaluating and saying, well, maybe we need to sell this guy, because he's probably the one that's not going to fit how we want to do it. Lo and behold, we kept hold of him, and we kept him in the team. He struggled, we struggled, but it turned out to be a good thing we didn't sell him, because when David Moyes hit that reset button, whenever you want to take it, let's just say post-World Cup, because I actually think we played okay. Post-World Cup, there was a few stinkers in there, Brighton, Newcastle, but generally speaking, I thought our form post-World Cup was pretty solid in the Premier League. The football was better for some games, but not much of it, but it was more effective. We went back to the old way, and Tomas Soucek is pivotal to that. Tomas Soucek is pivotal, and I actually thought the second half of the season, I thought he had a decent enough campaign, and he plays well, and he allows Paqueta to do his thing. He arguably allows Declan Rice to do his thing. Spoke in another video about the understanding between Rice and Soucek. When Rice goes gallivanting forward, Soucek wouldn't go. He would step back and he would allow Rice to do it. And Rice was able to do it, knowing Soucek could read the game and sit back in. And as much as I use stats, and I will always use data going forward, because I think they're indicators. I don't think they're the ultimate truth. I don't think they are everything in football. But I do think it's how I describe it, indicate the clues for you to go and investigate further. But I often think some of Soucek's strengths you can't determine via data. His position awareness, his discipline, his organisation defensively, there's no data to showcase that. Maybe in future there will be, but presently there isn't such a thing. But the second half of the season, I actually thought he was alright, and I think he was quite fundamental to the midfield playing well, and Paqueta playing well, and Rice playing well. I think if you put in a different midfielder in there, I'm not so sure you get those big performances from Rice and Paqueta. I think Soucek is important to that. But now we get to this summer, and we've got another evaluation of Tomas Soucek to make here. Well, I certainly want to see his position upgraded. I would like us to bring in two midfielders, one to be a defensive midfielder essentially, and an upgrade on Tomas Soucek, someone that is better in possession. But then that puts the question mark over Tomas Soucek's head. Now, if he was here next season, I'm not against it. I think he's a good player. I think he's got a bit to play. I don't think his journey at West Ham is necessarily over. I'm not going to be gutted if we don't sell him. I just think we'd be wise to cash in on him now because of his contract situation. 28 years old at present. I think we've seen the best of him because, and that wasn't last season, that was prior to that when he was scoring goals and stuff, because we have changed it a little bit because Paqueta's now in the team. I don't know if we'll see the old Soucek again. Now, Soucek's performances, and you can count them on one hand here, Soucek's better performances, I would argue, come when Declan Rice isn't in the team. The problem is we don't see it because Declan Rice is ever present. That in the few instances that we have seen Soucek without Rice and just Flynn Downs next to him, and you see a bit more of an attacking Tomas Soucek, I think that's when his better performances come at West Ham. But I think that's a gamble to assume bringing in, let's just say we brought in Polinia, to assume you would get that Soucek back. I'm not confident on that one. I'm not. And even if you did, I'm not sure it's enough. I still think we need a more progressive midfielder next to the defence midfielder, in behind next to Lucas Paqueta as well. I don't think Tomas Soucek is the answer. Then that raises the big question though, so does he have a future at West Ham? I think he does under David Moyes, but I think that's part of the problem. And I actually think Tomas Soucek is David Moyes' Achilles heel a little bit here, because Moyes trusts him, and I understand why. He knows what he's going to get. He knows you're going to get 100% from Soucek. You know, as much as people I've questioned the inclusion of Soucek, I myself, Gonzo, and loads of other people, the subscribers, etc. I've never ever seen someone question Soucek's work rate or his likability and stuff, and I just like it when people get these things muddled up. When people say, "Oh, slagging off Soucek," it's not slagging off Soucek. It's having an opinion regarding the inclusion of Soucek in the team. I think it's two different things. Querying his ability in possession doesn't mean you're slagging him off. It just means you have an opinion that perhaps is not a good one in regards to Soucek's inclusion in the team. So I think he's been a wonderful player for us. He was pivotal for us. Played a massive part in us staying up when we signed him in January. Him and Bowen coming in changed West Ham. And then when we finished 6th in the Premier League, he was enormous that season. And the drop-off has been disappointing. And funny enough, a large part of that was because of the contract situation. After that first full season he had, and he's seen contracts getting handed out to new players. We were bringing in new players. We brought in Kurt Zouma on 100 grand a week or whatever, and Tomas Soucek's agent turned around and said, well, hang on a minute, Thomas is a large part of the reason you finished 6th, so can he have 100 grand a week please? And West Ham said, nah, he's not worth that, we're not giving him a new deal. And that's been an issue for quite some time now. This, I say, contract standoff is not a standoff, it's just a contract disagreement. That was that. There was no negotiations. West Ham just did not want to give Soucek a new contract. Now here we are now. So I think West Ham have got a big call to make with Tomas Soucek, and I do strongly believe the best thing to do would be to cash in, because you'd still get a decent wedge for him. I don't know, 20 million maybe. I think you'd get your money back. I think there'd be plenty of suitors out there for him, but it would give Moyes / the technical director a decent bit of money to replace Tomas Soucek with. Now, bearing in mind, we are already talking, hypothetically, about taking Declan Rice's transfer fees, splitting it in two, in theory, to replace Declan Rice and then replace Tomas Soucek. So arguably, we're upgrading Soucek already without touching the potential money for Tomas Soucek. Obviously, naturally, that's what you want to do. You want to improve the starting 11. The players in the starting 11 become players on the bench at West Ham. You know, Emerson, I would imagine, would start as first choice left back next season. Creswell's now the left back on the bench. Good business. That is ideal. Agurd's come into the starting 11. Ogbonna drops to the bench. Good business. Scamacca comes in, and you get my point. So you want to bring someone in that's going to essentially nudge Soucek onto the bench. I'm not confident David Moyes does that. I actually think, this is why I called him his Achilles heel, I think it would do Moyes a favour if we sold Tomas Soucek, because then he can't play him anymore. It's like, you've got to come up with something now. You have to come up with an equation in that midfield which gets the best out of the three of them. Soucek was pivotal, I do feel, for Rice and Paqueta. Rice is going. That midfield's changing, and I think it's an opportunity for David Moyes to rip up what has been tried and tested. And we know how good Lucas Paqueta can be, so when we do go to the market in the summer, let's get in two midfielders that we feel can complement the team but get the best out of Lucas Paqueta. One thing I feel like I'm in the minority for this, but I don't get it. There's often criticism thrown towards Slaven Bilic about how Bilic relied on Dimitri Payet. It's usually a thing. Oh, Bilic was only good because of Dimitri Payet. I mean, I would agree with that, but I don't get why it's a bad thing. What Slaven Bilic got the best out of our best player. I'm unsure how that is a criticism. I think that's a fantastic strength for a manager to identify his best player and then to get the best out of him, and then as a result you win games. I think that's good management, personally. And I think Lucas Paqueta, while he's different to Dimitri Payet, he probably won't score as many or get as many assists, but in terms of influence, I think Paqueta has that ability. So when we do go to market to bring in these two players to replace Rice and Soucek, I think we need to have an eye on how does this impact Lucas Paqueta? Does this get the best out of him? Because I think Tomas Soucek's been pivotal to that so far. Because Paqueta, maybe this is going to be unpopular, I don't know. I've seen him be a lazy sod during games. I've seen him walking around, and I don't mind it while it's working, and it has been working, where he has been able to not run back. And I'm not saying he doesn't work hard when he's in the vicinity of the ball. I've seen him working hard, but I've also seen him not running back to help out. But he can do that because of Rice and Soucek. He doesn't have to get back all the time because he knows Rice and Soucek are there. He knows defensively those two are fantastic in terms of your centre midfield protecting defence. Those two were as good as they come as a partnership. So we go to buy players. I want to see a replacement for Rice and Soucek, but also two players that's going to not impact Lucas Paqueta, so we can get the best out of our best player in midfield. We saw it in the final. Jared Bowen is linking up with Paqueta. Bowen knows when he's got the ball, move. Get on the run because he can find you. Benrahma's linking up really well with Paqueta. We'll probably need a new striker, but again, let's get a striker that can work with Lucas Paqueta. You don't want to become a one-man team, but when he's bloody good and costs 50 million, I don't really have a problem with it, as long as you've got a plan B, which is either a replacement for Paqueta, or you change your formation, or you change your style when he's unavailable, so that's you're not lost completely. Anyway, a bit of a rambling one. I saw one rumour. I'm not even going to put it in the title or the thumbnail anyway. I seen a rumour last night which tickled me. So we've got the Arsenal interest in Declan Rice, and we've got the Man City interest in Declan Rice, and then Man U's been lingering somewhat. Will Man U make a bid? Will Man? And the reports last night, Man United's bid was going to be 40 million plus Harry Maguire and Alanga. I mean, honestly, if that bid came through, right? Do you know how David Sutherland apparently replied to Arsenal's second bid? No, I wouldn't even reply. If Man United offered Alanga and Maguire and 40 million, I'd block them. You don't even speak to me again. Just don't reply. Just block. That offer is so old. I think Man United would try and make it on the fax machine they used for the David De Gea saga to Real Madrid. That would be the most horrific. I thought Arsenal's offer was insulting. I think that one is worse. Alanga, Maguire, and I actually like Maguire, but 40 million as well. I mean, at least be competitive. The one I've seen going around, 75 million in Kalvin Phillips, for what it's worth, I'd love that. I'd bite your hand off at it. And the reason being, how much do we think we're going to get for Declan Rice? 100 million, 110 million? I mean, guaranteed money here, not the add-on stuff. Guaranteed 100 million, I think. I think if City put 100 million on the table cash, I think Sullivan takes it. So, working backwards from my own logic, that would value Kalvin Phillips at 25 million, which is a bargain. So 75 and Kalvin Phillips, yes please. I know he's injury prone. He's essentially be Kurt Zouma in defensive midfield. When he's fit, he's in your team, he's fantastic, but he's going to play 25 games for you at best. He will miss a third of the season, so you've got to make sure you've got someone that can play there when he's unavailable. But it's a bit like the Kurt Zouma thing. He's that good, that's something he's possibly worth having to play that 25 games a season, because in that 25 games he will make a huge difference. So it's a bit of a gamble, but 75 and Kalvin Phillips, yes please. Maguire and 40 million, I wouldn't even reply. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this rambling, please do drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're around here. But to summarise, I'd be cashing in on Tomas Soucek this summer.